Well, actually, there'll be no significant impact on the program statewide. I don't see it as affecting the food stamps in the other counties in the state, except that they're aware of the situation in the 4 counties and they're naturally concerned. But so far as the stamps not being made available in the other counties, I do not foresee that as happening at all.
Why are these counties having trouble?
Well, they tell us that it's a matter of funding, that the smaller counties are short on money for one reason or another. 1 or 2 of them have even told me that they had certain county expenses that they gave priorities to over food stamps, such as road repairs and such as that. And I was disappointed to be told that, but I know that some of the smaller counties are suffering financially. But there's no reason why all of the counties except the smallest ones couldn't be self-supporting in the food stamp program.
Is there a possibility that the state will eventually have to take over the food stamp program to make sure it's done evenly statewide?
That is entirely possible. It has been talked about, and in most states in the country, the state does run the food stamp program. And during the last legislature, the state filed a bill to ask for permission to take the program over when and if the governor saw fit to take it over. The reason that clause was put in there, we didn't know as of that time right where the money would come from. But the reason the bill had to be filed was on account of the way the original food stamp bill is structured, the 4% sales tax on the bonus part of the stamps, which goes to the county to help with implementation of their half of the county expense, now goes to the counties, and that would have to be redirected to the state to help with the state's expense of it before the program could be changed over to the state. And if the legislature in January sees fit to make that move, then there's a good possibility that it will become a state program.
Shortly after Mr. Foster's suit was made known, WSFA TV talked with the Florida developer, who had little to say except that he was doing what was required of him in the lease agreement and that there was some light at the end of the tunnel as far as development of Union Station goes. But just how far away that light was, Mr. Foster wouldn't say. Bill Weaver, WSFA TV News at Union Station in downtown Montgomery.
We should be, at least I feel like it's an honor to be playing Southern Cal and be playing the #1 team in the nation. And although we're not very healthy and not nearly as good as I'd like for us to be, I'd rather be playing them than #101. The thing that I don't like about it is it's going to make it awfully difficult for us is we had the tough game last week and the one like it this week and the next week, and then the game is going to really be tough to get ready for Louisville.
What impresses you about the secondary of Southern Cal?
Well, I think they're going to have the best secondary we faced yet. They got one preseason All-American back there in Thurman at the safety, and he looked real well in the films that we saw on him. And they got 2 or 3 corners that's pretty good. I think this is going to be the best secondary we played against this year.
You like to get the single coverage. They say they've got a couple of guys that believe they can cover anybody one-on-one. What do you think about that?
Well, yeah, they got this one dude, Odom. They'll send him to I guess the top receiver majority of the time, and they feel real confident about being able to cover one-on-one because they got quick feet and good speed, and they're big for defensive backs. So they got the tools to to have that confidence in themselves.
This Southern Cal team looks like it throws the ball about as well as it runs it, and that's bad on you guys, isn't it?
Yeah, it presents a problem because they got those great receivers, and then White runs really well outside, and you can't really go by any trends because they can hurt you either way.
Do you run up against many teams who have the speed on both flanks that this team does?
Well, not as much speed. Both these guys, they're sprinters. I think they run under 10 flat, both of them, and the guys that replaces them are about as fast too.
It's been just a little more than 3 months since John Mitchell came here to Maxwell Federal Prison to begin serving his 2.5 to 8 year sentence for his part in the Watergate crimes. But today, the same judge that sent Mitchell here reduced that sentence to a minimum of 1 year. Sirica also reduced the sentences of 2 other Watergate conspirators, H.R. Haldeman and John Ehrlichman. Reports from Washington indicate that Sirica made his decision after listening to tape recordings from each of the 3 men. Each indicated that he was sorry for any wrongdoings he may have committed in the past. In Mitchell's case, his lawyers asked the judge for an early release for Mitchell so that he could get what is described as a much-needed hip operation. That request was also denied. And late this afternoon, officials here at Maxwell had not received any official word from Washington, but they expect to do so within the next couple of days. And once again, WSFA TV tried to get an interview with Mitchell, a request which he also denied. This is Dave Rickey, WSFA TV News, Maxwell Prison Camp.
Well, let me go at it between stocks and bonds. Give you stocks first and bonds second. All right. June, 85 million. September of 75, 100 million. December of 75, 100. All right. 100 million. All right. September of 76, 150 million. December of 76, 100.
It is on remand. Yes, ma'am. That's a significant.
But with instructions up.
We are presently, at this time, $4.3 million short of covering our costs at the 1224 return on equity that this commission determined is fair. The wages next year, when these rates are going to be effective, are going to be $23 million higher than they are on a going basis currently. Depreciation is going to be $10 million more. Other costs are going to be up a little less than $3 million. That's supplies and rentals. Taxes are going to be about $20 million more, $19.4 million more. Interest is going to be $3.4 million more than it is today. And our equity costs, we are going to put $132 million more of equity capital in Alabama than we did in the test period in 1978. And that's $18.6 million more. Now, the revenues that we are presently charging will produce about $41 million more through growth of services and the number of people served next year. The remainder of the needs to cover those higher costs must come from higher rates. Of those higher rates we're seeking, $14 million of the $52 million is to provide a better return on equity, a higher profit rate, if you please, that comports itself with the nation's capital markets today. And of that, the tax man will get half. So of the $52 million, we're asking for $7 million to improve our level of profits to what we consider to be a more reasonable level in the light of today's financial environment, which is 13 to 15% on equity. Now,
A daily copy of the transcript. If you can do this, I think it would be most helpful.
Morris F. Bishop Sweeney.
Second, as a result of the prior vote, the record call commission meeting ordered the company 22nd suspended the effective date through March, the date of August 22nd, 1977, South Central Bill by cover letter.
Well, at the time there are over 1,000 have applied to compete, and I understand that they have accepted 900 competitors. The competition will be the strongest will be the United States Border Patrol, the Secret Service, the Texas Highway Patrol. Mississippi Highway Patrol's come on strong. The Canadian Royal Mounted Police will be there. New York City, they'll be from all over the United States. And of course we'll be there.
What do you think your chances are of coming away with that title? And you have won in previous years. What do you think your chances are of winning this match in Jackson, Mississippi?
Well, we're going to give it all we've got. This time we're going to do something we've never done before. We're going to try for the four-man national team. In the past we have last year we had the two-man national team title, which was fired by Sergeant Jim Collins and Trooper Jimmy Woods. They set a new national record, 1196. They each dropped 2 points each. And they're number one. And of course, Collins is a national champion. We're trying for a repeat on that. He's won several regionals in a row, has the state championship, as well as he's the number one man on the Governor's 20.
Okay, what shooting team will be your major competition, you think, out of all the others that'll be there?
I would say probably Mississippi Highway Patrol, the Secret Service. Between those two probably lie the strong challenge for the national team title.
Training to shoot a pistol is probably different from any other kind of competition in that respect. There's more mental conditioning than there is physical conditioning. Consequently, there's a lot more, you have to concentrate more while you're shooting because it's a precision sport. So it's more mental than it is physical, really.
We don't want to give away any secrets, but for the layman, what kind of mental conditioning do you do?
Well, it's sort of like walking and chewing gum at the same time, you know. That type of individual generally makes a good pistol shooter if he can't do both of them. So if he can concentrate on one thing, and basically that's it. It's just being able to really have intense concentration on one thing at a time.
Put everything else out of your mind but what you're doing.
Exactly right.
How much practice do you put in a week's time, let's say?
Well, normally I only practice maybe 1 or 2 days a week when I'm off, but we're getting ready for nationals now, and I always take my vacation this time of year, so I practice every day for at least a week before going down there and make sure that I got everything down.
And when you get on the range in competition, is it a lot of mental pressure for you, or is it pressure on the other guys?
Well, it's on everybody. The stress of competing itself, it puts a certain amount of stress on the policeman. And yeah, if you know you're about to win a national championship, it's a tremendous amount of pressure on you, just like it would be in a tennis match or a golf tournament or something like that.
Shot 600 out of
The Klansmen had said that 5,000 people would turn out to this rally in downtown Montgomery, but only about 100 spectators lined the route of their march. It got underway on time at 10 o'clock this morning, and it took approximately 20 minutes for them to reach the front of the courthouse steps to make their speech. Security was extremely tight, with local, state, and federal police making the security some of the tightest that we've seen in this city. Among those guarding the rights of the Klansmen were black police officers. There appeared to be no trouble along the route. One downtown bank building was the site of some suspicion by the strike force here in town, but apparently there was nothing to it. A man had been seen on the roof and he was unidentified. When the Klansmen got to the federal courthouse building, there was 15 of them. 2 people set up the podium, and the leader made his speech to the small crowd that assembled in front of him.
Primary issue here is, of course, as all of you know, the Panama Canal giveaway, which, as far as we're concerned, is just one more example of our government's pro-minority interest and its complete disregard for the interest of the American majority. We consider the Panama Canal giveaway to be another example of our foreign policy sellouts, our government's giving away, subverting the interest of white America and of white Western civilization to the interest of the non-white communist-oriented nations of the world. But ladies and gentlemen, this is only one issue for which we're fighting. There are countless others, and Americans all over the country are beginning to realize that if they don't start doing something about this, that nobody is. Wherever I've gone throughout America and throughout Alabama, I've found that there's an awakening, a changing mood among white Americans who are beginning to realize that they are becoming second-class citizens. We are the people who are being discriminated against today in America. We are the people who are discriminated against in jobs, in promotions, in scholarships. We are the people who are paying an ever-increasing tax burden and enjoying fewer and fewer of the benefits. We are the people who are the victims of the ever-increasing crime rate in this country. And we, our interests, are the interests who are being subverted by our government. So, ladies and gentlemen, there's only one way to change that, and that is to unite. To unite just as minorities have united, to unite as white people, as white Americans, and to make your feelings known to every politician in Washington, every politician here in the Capitol, to make your feelings known and to let everybody know where you stand. And then things will start beginning to change. Then we can restore this country. Then we can take America back.
What happened here today was a group of Klansmen closely guarded by local police officers, black and white. There were no problems here in town. The Klan had their constitutional right to make a speech on the steps of the federal courthouse in Montgomery, Alabama, a city that has had quite a few racial problems in the 60s, in the 50s, and in the early 70s. But because of tight security, surveillance by police, and a general attitude of goodwill and granting people their constitutional rights, the Klan March in Montgomery did not draw 5,000 people, but it was a success in terms of no violence and no trouble. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News, downtown Montgomery.
Did you think that you'd have more in today's parade than turned out?
Certainly, yeah. We did anticipate a larger number of people. A lot of people are just skittish about coming out on the streets, particularly when the Klan's involved, since there have been some recent incidents in Mobile and so forth, which have made people a little leery. As far as we're concerned, their fears are unjustified, and I think people are going to begin to realize that after a while. But for the time being, we have to work with whom we can get.
Do you have plans for future rallies such as this?
Oh, yes, absolutely. We've got another one in Birmingham, of course, next Saturday. And we have marches and rallies scheduled throughout the state. And we will be coming back to Montgomery before too long.
Do you feel that your followership is growing?
Well, I know it's growing. I've been in this organization for 3 years now, and it's growing every month, every day, for that matter. And this is really the first time in some time that we've gotten into public demonstrations and so forth, but as evidenced by our rallies and other activities, and the Klan is definitely growing.
Senator, can you outline the bill for me?
Clark, the bills, or the package of bills which we've introduced, are the same bills that we have introduced since 1975 in every session of the legislature. They're called the governor's utility bills, but I have introduced them. Senator Jones, Senator Goodwin have introduced them time and again since 1975. The bills, are the four major bills, are the rate-based bill, as it's called, which is designed to take the future construction cost out of the rate base charged by the power company and all utilities, but primarily by the power company, and cause the stockholders to invest from their profits, as is done by all industries, rather than building in a provision which allows the future construction costs to be charged to consumers. The second bill that we think is important, of major importance, is the fuel adjustment clause bill, which provides that fuel adjustments will be brought before, of necessity, be brought before the Public Service Commission, and the Public Service Commission will have to include them in the rate base, as opposed to the power company being able to be completely unregulated on fuel adjustment. Fuel adjustment clause or cost actually make up about 70% of all cost, operating cost of the power company. We've reintroduced the bill which provides for direct appeal to the Supreme Court and does away with the intermediate steps which we feel are cumbersome, and ultimately these issues are always resolved in the Supreme Court. We think that it should be done in the first step, as opposed to the taxpayers and consumers having to wait a long period of time and pay great cost for that being done. The fourth bill, which we have introduced and which we feel is of great importance, is the bill which would require utilities which have been found to be charging excessive or illegal rates to return that money that they have charged to the consumers. Presently, if a utility is found to have charged an illegal rate or an excessive rate, then they get to keep it. They don't have to give it back. We feel that it's morally wrong for them to be allowed the opportunity to retain monies that are illegally charged of consumers. And so that's the four bills that we have referred to in our press release. We think that it's the essence that we pass these bills in as timely a manner as we can. We have support now in the Senate that we've never had before. We feel that we can pass them, and we intend to do everything possible to pass them.
Clark, I might add one thing along that same line. When you get to this rate-based bill, we've got a situation right now in Alabama where the telephone company has been ordered to give the people monies back and to lower their rates. Well, they in turn use this rate-based bill to go back into the PSC, and to keep your telephone bills from being lowered, they're going to keep them constant or raise them, because they're saying we're going to have X amount of future dollars constructed in Alabama. We've got to put this in our rate base. So if this bill had passed, the telephone company wouldn't be able to do this under the present system.
Is there any way it could be retroactive?
Well, I don't know whether you can make it retroactive or not. That'd be a question, because then you get into the complications of bonds have been sold on this and construction obligations made and so forth. But I think in order for us to ever get the utilities on a stabilized basis, a stabilized course, and stop them going up, 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 this is what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to pass these bills. And the public's going to have to become aware of what's being done for them up in the legislature. The public's going to have to come up there and let themselves be heard in the Senate and in the House to make the senators and the people up there responsible pass these bills.
Clark, the thing that I think about more than anything else, I guess, is the fact that everybody says, and the senators and the people in the legislature who've been against it said, well, they're not going to do any good anyhow. Well, if they felt like this, it wasn't going to do any good, why are they so adamant about passing them? Why are we having so much trouble getting them passed? It seems if they're not going to do any good, they ought to go ahead and pass them. Let's see if they'll do any good.
One thing that comes to mind, this bill, this package and some others seem to be going above or beyond the Public Service Commission. Is that because they've not proven to be effective?
Clark, the problem with the Public Service Commission is that when they were created by the legislature, they were vested with the same authority that the legislature had. They are an arm of the legislature. But year by year, they have lost the authority that they were originally given. For instance, they just gave away by an act of the Public Service Commission the right to set fuel cost and established what is now known as the Fuel Adjustment Clause. They did that. Back in 1971, the legislature took away part of their rights when they built in the future construction cost by an amendment to a bill that was not understood by anybody in the legislature. A member of the legislature, the member of the legislature who sponsored that bill, Bob Eggington from Mobile, has since come back and said that he was misled, that it had been misrepresented to him. He did not understand what the amendment did, that it was a terrible mistake, and he has personally asked every member of the legislature to repeal that amendment. We've tried to repeal it, and obviously the power company has been able to thwart every effort that we've made. But the problem with the Public Service Commission is not what they had originally. It's the fact that it's been given away by them or taken away by the legislature down through the years. And what we've got to do is give back to them what they need in order to effectively regulate rates.
You've also had the problem over there of proper staffing. For years and years, the PSC, you know, as long as they didn't rock the boat and they didn't get into these matters as much as they've probably gotten into them the last few years. And they hadn't come over to the legislature in the past and requested the funding that they needed to get into the investigations and the things that they need to look out for the public and look into the utilities more. I think they are becoming more conscious of this now. And in fact, last session with the legislature, they came back and we increased their budget, I think $300,000. But this is one of the things that's been advocated by people over at the PSC, and I think probably one of the reasons is the utilities have had too much influence in the PSC. I'm not accusing anyone of the PSC, and I don't blame the utilities. You know, you go just like y'all, you go where you control from, and you try to work out a good relationship for as little control as possible. But I think now that the public's becoming more aware of these problems, the PSC is becoming aware of them, and these are one of the problem areas that they've gotten into is the funding, and I think that if you get the proper funding over there in the PSC, that you will get, and you get these bills passed, you will get the proper response as far as the public interest is concerned.
What about opposition to this package?
Well, certainly the Alabama Power Company is going to be against it, but it seems to me that the man on the street, well, we saw the newspaper, only 2% felt like the Alabama Power Company was doing a good job. Most everybody I talk to, when it gets to where your mortgage is not as great as your utility bill, well, then the beat begin to hurt. I don't know how the average man is going to be able to continue. We see people now, they're shutting off rooms so they won't have air conditioning. They're shutting off rooms from heat. They're cutting their thermostats down even below what the president has requested in the energy package. And somehow or another, we're going to have to find some way in order to get this down so that people can live with it, because I just can't conceive of the people making the kind of money they're making now and being able to pay these utility bills.
Well, we're a group of people who are held together nothing but in the world except friendship. We have no binding contracts or anything at all. It's a group of people that I personally know, and we go from different malls throughout the southeastern part of the United States. We put on these craft shows, no art, it's all craft show. And we have been in, I believe, in this mall about 5 or 6 years, so everywhere we go, they always ask us to come back. So we just go back from year to year to about the same places.
What kind of craftsmen do you have traveling with you this year?
Well, we have mostly all of them are traditional crafts, and we have many of them which are, well, I would say contemporary crafts. And but all in all, we have people who are making brooms, doing wood turning, they're doing weaving, and weaving with corn shucks instead of the regular cloth. We have some people who are weaving with cloth. We have broom makers who are tying brooms on the spot, and it's just about anything in the way of crafts, chair bottoming, things like that, and basket making, basket weaving, about anything you'd want to see in the way of crafts. Well, we think we've got it on our show.
Where do you find the people that do these crafts?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's real interesting where you find these people. I personally am acquainted, I guess, with some 1,500 craftsmen throughout the United States, and I know what they do. I know their attitude. I know their ability. And besides that, we visit shows all over the southeastern part of the United States. A lot of times in a little small show, we'll find a jewel, and maybe just needs a little cultivating and a little polishing up, and he makes a fine craftsman. And we like people who specialize rather than people who do a little of everything. We like people who specialize in one particular item.
Where all do you and your bunch travel throughout a year?
Well, we go from our way to North Carolina to Florida to Mississippi. That's in that area, and that's anything encompassing that area.
How often do you have shows?
Well, we don't like to have a show at not over, well, 2 weeks is mighty close, because these people, they cannot buy anything. They've got to make everything, and they've got to go home and restock and get busy and work, and a lot of them like to go fishing, maybe miss the next show. They're a pretty independent bunch of people. We have people with us, electronic engineers and young people who more or less got tired of the rat race. They got tired of punching the clock from 8 till 5, or just being tied down and want to do their own thing. So they've just taken up this type of work, and I'm one of them. We all love it.
I noticed in looking at the quality of the merchandise that you have with your group of people that it's extremely high. What kind of standards do you have as far as your craftsmen are concerned?
It's required before anybody joins our group, first that we judge them on attitude. We like people who are friendly, people who talk with people. Then we judge them on their ability. Second, we hope to get a good strength in both the ability and the attitude. And the people, they must not only submit slides and pictures of the work they do, we must personally see their work before that they can show with us. And another thing, too, we have a lot of people we have a backlog, I guess, some 400 people who want to get into our shows, but the reason they can't is not because they're not good craftsmen. It's really because that we have somebody doing that type of work that we feel is the best in the country. So as it goes right now, we only have one of a kind in the show. You don't see any two people doing the same thing.
The state of Alabama, we just can't afford to have the food stamp program cut off in no counties. And of course, I don't know how true it is, these counties stating that they do not have the funds to pay for the food stamps, because is that in many instances the county commissions do not want the food stamp program in the first place, and they would use every defensive mechanism that are known to human beings to prevent a food stamp program from being in their county, because the food stamp program basically help poor people, both black and whites. I know a lot of these county commissioners do not want the food stamp program, period, because most of the recipients are black. They don't fuss about the old age pension. Have you ever heard in the state of Alabama a white politician ever mention anything about old age pension? They never have, because 90% of the people on old age pension are white. They mention about aid to dependent children, because about 80% of those people are black. They mention about food stamp, because about 80% of those people are black. No federal program where the majority of the whites are recipients, no politician in this state ever mentioned anything about it. And of course, you know, they criticize me. They say, you know, I'm an agitator and rabble-rouser, and I'm always trying to stir things up. But they really don't mean that in their hearts, I know.
Why did it take so long?
Well, Norman, I don't know for sure. You just it takes that long in cases like this to get the right evidence. I think time has a way of freeing some people from the fears they might have once had about coming forward, and now they are coming forward, whereas they wouldn't years ago. Might also add that I don't believe really anyone has investigated as intently as Attorney General Baxley has.
Have you been able to determine why a serious investigation didn't take place back in the 60s when this thing occurred?
Well, I think they had a serious investigation. I just don't know that it was as thorough as ours is, and here again, I don't think people were talking as freely then as they are now.
Some people say this investigation is politically motivated by the Attorney General to get black votes.
Well, I'm sure there'll be many who say that. Let me say that Alabama prisons are crammed full of people who've used politics as defense in all of our cases that we've brought. They always bring up politics one way or the other, so I'm not surprised what some people will say here. But the reason why is because Baxter was sworn to uphold the law, and that our forefathers and our Constitution and their wisdom stated that there was no statute of limitations on murder. And this is what this is in Birmingham, murder. And whether it be white or black, justice has to be done, and he's gone about seeing that I and others have investigated and turned up the facts sufficient to get an indictment and conviction.
Did the Attorney General consider the fact that this could hurt him politically with whites?
I don't know what Bill Baxter considered. I know this, he's never been one to consider the alternatives other than just to go ahead. He's always had the guts to take the initiative and go forward and do what he thinks ought to be done.
Could it be said that in this case, some special security procedures have been taken because of the very nature of the crime that was committed?
Well, yes, of course, one incident that comes to mind is in Birmingham, this habeas corpus hearing. The judges saw fit to set up a special screen to screen everyone coming in to check for weapons such as you would when you board an airplane. And I think there will be more elaborate procedures taken in this case, both here in Montgomery and in Birmingham where the case is tried.
Do you look under your hood when you come out?
Well, like I say, we take several security procedures and precautions, and I wouldn't want to get into that.
We are having more and more petitions for approval of rules. As a matter of fact, we have just received a request to approve cameras in the courtrooms in Lee County. And the Court of Civil Appeals has just submitted, and we've approved the rule. So that's sort of catching on now. It goes without saying that those people who film and record, take pictures, have got to be responsible, and I would say to date, and I believe in the future, that the media is responsible and is responsive to this program. Alabama and Colorado are really leaders in the nation in permitting cameras in the courtroom.
Judge, how would you term today's quote-unquote session with the people?
I thought it was very interesting. There were a number of students and a number of townspeople, and this is the first time that the court has met in actual session in Auburn, at Auburn University. The crowd was very attentive. The comments were excellent. The issues were issues that I felt were of interest, since they were criminal law, and the public is interested in criminal law and how those cases are handled. I was very pleased and very happy to be on the campus of Auburn University.